Alright, we are back with another Game of Thrones video. George R.R. Martin said he is not sure if he'll ever finish The Winds of Winter, and the internet did what it does best and bully an old man hoping that will make the book come out faster somehow. 200 IQ. Okay, let's get into it, and yeah, make sure to like and subscribe and all of that. But to address the elephant in the room, it's been about 2 to 3 months since I stopped making Game of Thrones A Song of Ice and Fire content, and I'll get more into that at the end of the video. Spoiler alert, we are back. But since then, George R.R. Martin did an interview with Forbes where he talks about his next book. And yeah, I know I'm very late to the party, but you know, better late than never, especially for the ad revenue. But I wanted to get into why he's so late and all of that, and the disgusting reaction the community had to this statement. But this is what he said word for word. Unfortunately, I am 13 years late. Every time I say that, I'm like, how could I be 13 years late? I don't know. It happens a day at a time, but that's still a priority. A lot of people are already writing obituaries for me. They're saying, oh, he'll never be finished. Maybe they're right, I don't know. I'm alive right now. I seem pretty vital. Yeah, that's the nice way of him saying, stop asking me, goddamn. Like, he knows he's 13 years late. I feel like he knows that better than anyone. And yeah, I do want to talk about the really terrible reaction the community had to this poor old Santa Claus George saying all of this. It was really, really brutal. But overall, I think he knows exactly why he's 13 years late. Some of it is literally just common sense. Since his last book, he's had to work on at least 3 TV shows in his own universe. He's helped a lot of other shows be written. He did the entire world building of the video game Elden Ring, which literally won Game of the Year, mind you. He's also like 100 years old. Age catches up with everyone. If Queen Elizabeth can die, then anyone can die. Like, it's really obvious. Not to mention, this dude with all of those problems is still like 75% done the book. And that 75% update was 3 years ago when he said he was done like 3/4 on the Stephen Colbert show.
And I think I'm about 3/4 of the way done. I'm done with some of the characters. You know, the characters all interweave.
Sure.
So I've actually finished with a couple of the characters. I got their whole story, but not others.
10 years to go 75% of the way through means
that's depressing. That's depressing. Yes.
Okay, all right. So 3 more years.
I mean, 75% of the book done. That interview was in 2022, so he's probably at least done 82%. He could go higher than that, but I'm just giving like the bare minimum. And George has said that 2024 was like a bad year for him. A lot of his friends passed away, and I imagine that wasn't even the worst thing. The worst thing for him was probably looking at how ass House of the Dragon Season 2 was. So I assume saying George has at least done 82% of the Winds of Winter is a pretty good estimate. But everything I just mentioned are external reasons why Winds is taking so long, and George being like, damn, 13 years is pretty late. But I want to look at the internal reasons why Winds is taking so long. To be honest, the book is kind of a huge challenge to write. There are so many moving parts that George has to untangle. I mean, the web of characters that are all connected to each other is insane. Even characters who have never met each other, like Jon and Daenerys, are somehow still connected. A character like Tyrion, who feels like he legit has traveled the entire world, is connected to so many people as well. And it's so hard to execute some of these character arcs to a satisfying degree while still keeping in mind everything that's happening in the world. I know this might sound a bit confusing, so let me give you an example. Let's use Daenerys for an example. Daenerys has to have a whole arc with the Dothraki. Then she has to play the part in the Battle of Fire, which George has confirmed it is happening. Then she has to probably have some sort of arc with how dangerous her dragons are, and whether she likes that danger or hates that danger. Then she has to meet Tyrion and have a whole arc with Tyrion. She might also have some sort of arc with Jorah that could happen in A Dream of Spring, but makes more sense for it to happen here. And then she can sail to Westeros at the end of the book. And this is all under the assumption that she'll have all of these events happen pretty fast, and certain events don't happen to make things slower, like Euron Greyjoy messing around with her, or Dany hearing about Jon and young Griff also being Targaryens fighting for the Iron Throne or something. Like, we have to assume all of that just doesn't happen. Like, what are the chances that George actually knows exactly what to do with any of this? And this is only one character. This is only Daenerys. From everything I know, Daenerys is one of the easier characters for George to write. Like, Bran is the hardest character to write according to George.
Would you say it's the most difficult character for you to write?
The most difficult viewpoint character to write is Bran, and he has always been the hardest. He is the youngest viewpoint character, which is difficult in and of itself, because when you're writing a character that young, you can't simply write what's going on. You have to filter everything through, okay, he's 8 years old. What does he understand? He's seeing this scene. Does he actually understand what's happening in this scene? He gets involved more than any other character in the magical side of the fantasy. And magic is something that has to be handled very, very carefully in fantasy, especially a low magic fantasy like mine. All of these things make Bran very difficult to write, and his chapters I have to put together very, 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 very carefully, and they tend to take me longer to write than the chapters of any other character. Which is not to say I don't love the character, and some of the stuff he's getting in is great. I really enjoyed writing some of his chapters in Dance with Dragons in particular.
It's all Bran's fault, confirmed. But realistically, I do think people are overreacting. You gotta remember that these 13 years have already happened. We can't go back to the past and force the book to come out 10 years ago. These 13 years have already happened, and we gotta move forward. And in my opinion, at least George is saying he is healthy. George is rich as hell now too, so he has access to like the best medicine in the world. He's got that compound V. That's something to be grateful for. And I really hate how the community reacted to this. Like, people get really mad at George whenever he says he's enjoying working on other projects alongside the Winds of Winter, which is like totally fine, especially if it's going to help him write better. As much as George loves the series, at the end of the day, it can get too much. It's kind of like playing the same video game over and over again for like 13 years. You're gonna get drained. But people for some reason just want him to only write wins. Like that also wouldn't drive them crazy too if they had to do it. People are just very nasty towards George. Like this YouTube channel had a video of George saying I'm fat and lazy, and yeah, that's a pretty funny title. I watched like the first like 5 minutes of it, and I'm happy to say it is clickbait. George actually didn't admit he's fat and ugly, but you know, just let's be honest. But either way, I'm sure stuff like this video and the tweets he gets isn't helping Winds of Winter release any faster. Like George can't even say happy Halloween without people in the comments demanding the next book. Like at this point, if I was George, I wouldn't even want to publish the Winds of Winter to this toxic ass community. So those are a couple reasons why Winds of Winter is 13 years late. But in my opinion, the main reason why it's late is how George writes. George already said he is a gardener writer and not some pussy ass architect writer. If you don't know how he writes, he basically only writes in a flow state, so the characters can totally go their own way apart from what was originally intended. He basically writes like this.
I've often said that that writers are of two types. There is the architect, which is one type, and the architect, as with designing a building, lays out the entire novel ahead of time. He knows how many rooms there will be and what the roof will be made of and how high it will be and where the plumbing will run and where the electrical outlets will be in each room and all of that stuff before he drives the first nail. Everything is there in the blueprint. And then there's the gardener who like digs a hole in the ground and puts in the seed and waters it with his blood, and he sees what comes up. Now the gardener knows certain things. He's not completely ignorant. He knows whether he planted an oak tree or an ear of corn or a cauliflower. So he has some idea of the shape, but a lot of it depends on the wind and the weather and how much blood he gives it and so forth. So I think all writers are. No one is purely an architect. No one is purely a gardener in terms of writers, but many writers tend to one side or the other, and I'm very much more a gardener.
When it comes to George's garden, he basically planted 2,000 seeds and now he has to attend every single plant, and let's just say he is thugging it out most likely. George has also said the way he looks at his characters is almost like they are his children, which means he has 2,000 children and he needs to feed all of them and let them suckle on his glorious George Martin nipple. So being a gardener writer and a perfectionist is a terrible combination. Some of you might remember last decade George actually released a few sample chapters for the Winds of Winter, and I think a huge reason why George stopped all of that is because the garden changed around him and probably made him rewrite certain chapters. Like the characters are just too connected. Like if the garden changes around Jon Snow, the garden also changes for Daenerys, Bran, Arya, Sansa, Samwell, Melisandre, and probably Tyrion. And those are only the POV characters. That's not even including the non-POV characters like Young Griff, Ramsay, the Night's Watch, and hundreds of others. So I don't really know how you can expect George to finish The Winds of Winter even in 13 years. Like, maybe I'm the one talking crazy. Like, most people would say if you're working on something for 13 years and it keeps having to be pushed back, just give up. Like, that's kind of like if a married couple have been trying to have a kid for like the last 13 years every night and they just keep failing. Someone would tell them, yo, you are probably infertile. And to the people who are saying George should just give The Winds of Winter to another writer to write, that's kind of like lending your wife to have sex with other men because you can't give her a child or you can't make her finish. I mean, we are literally obsessed with a book series about dragons, but you know what I mean. No matter where George looks, people are just throwing tomatoes at him, and those tomatoes are only making it harder for him to finish. So if you want to know why it's taking him so long, 1, he's busy and old. 2, the book is almost impossible to write unless it's like over 3,000 pages. 3, he's a gardener writer. And 4, sending hate to him is not the wise move, boys. So yeah, believe it or not, George has not been fooling around for the last 13 years. Alright, last thing I want to talk about is why I stopped making Game of Thrones content. I'm gonna be honest, it was 99% to do with House of the Dragon Season 2. Season 1 was so perfect, so beautiful. Honestly felt like we were back. And Season 2 was just incredibly underwhelming that it kind of just sucked like a lot out of me. But now that we are like 6 months past it, I don't think it was as bad as I thought. I still think it's pretty average, but not as bad as I originally thought. There were some scenes I did take for granted. I have a video on it coming soon. But the other reason why I left is because the community is just so toxic. On YouTube it's actually really good, but on TikTok and Twitter it's just filled with teenagers pretending that these characters are like real life people, and if you dislike a character it somehow says that you were like a bad person in real life. Like, I've seen Daenerys fans say that anyone who likes Jon Snow more than her or thinks that Jon is Azor Ahai, that makes them automatically misogynistic. And I don't mean a few, I've seen thousands of comments like this, which is weird because the only person who can make a rule like that is George, and he's like 100 years old. He'll never say some dumb shit like that. But that's just one example. Like, I love the Lannisters, they're my favorite. Let's just say Lannisters are also really hated out there on TikTok, and I don't want to come off as like, oh, I'm offended of, you know, this type of BS. I was never offended by any of that. But even though I'm not offended by that, I could still like lose love for the media without, you know, being offended, you know what I mean? And that's what happened. And obviously this channel never started as a Game of Thrones channel, it evolved into that. But either way, I'm gonna start making a lot more Game of Thrones content again now that I'm like back to being passionate about it. I reread the book, but don't be surprised if every now and then I do still make other types of videos. And yeah, that's it for this video. Like, subscribe, and peace.